These are the airport security secrets that TSA officers, airlines and airports never explain to passengers, and knowing them could save you hours of stress, hundreds of dollars in fines, and even prevent you from missing your flight. Every year, millions of travelers walk into airports completely unaware of how security screening actually works behind the scenes. They assume the process is random, that rules are straightforward, and the following basic instructions will guarantee a smooth experience. Most of them are wrong on all three counts. The truth is that airport security operates on layers of systems, protocols, and technologies that the average traveler never sees. Some of these systems are designed to catch dangerous items, while others are meant to identify suspicious behavior. And here is where it gets interesting. Not all screenings are created equal, and the way you travel can determine whether you breeze through security or spend an extra hour being searched. Let us start with something most passengers have never heard of. If you have ever tried to check in online for a flight and received an error message telling you to see an agent at the airport, you may have been flagged for enhanced security screening. This designation appears on your boarding pass as 4 letters, SSS. It stands for Secondary Security Screening Selection, and it means the Department of Homeland Security has selected you for additional inspection before you board your flight. The criteria for receiving SSSS are kept confidential, but certain patterns increase your likelihood of being selected. Booking a one-way international ticket, paying for your flight with cash, traveling to destinations the State Department considers high risk, or having an unusual itinerary with multiple connections through sensitive countries can all trigger the designation. Sometimes passengers are selected completely at random as part of the unpredictability built into the security system. What happens when you have SSS on your boarding pass changes everything about your airport experience. You cannot use TSA PreCheck lanes, even if you are a member. Security officers will conduct a thorough inspection of your carry-on luggage, often removing every item for individual examination. Your hands, shoes, and belongings will likely be swabbed for explosive residue. A pat-down is standard procedure, and you may be asked questions about your travel plans, employment, and itinerary. The entire process can take anywhere from 15 minutes to over an hour, depending on the airport and how busy the checkpoint is. Airlines will not hold your flight or offer compensation if you miss it due to this screening. If you discover SSSS on your boarding pass, arriving at the airport 3 hours before your flight is no longer optional. For travelers who receive this designation repeatedly, there is a formal process to resolve it. The DHS Traveler Redress Inquiry Program allows passengers to submit information about themselves and request a review of their screening status. After investigation, travelers who are cleared receive a redress control number that can be added to future reservations, though this does not guarantee exemption from all additional screening. Now, beyond SSSS, there is another system operating as security checkpoints that most passengers never notice. Behavior detection officers are trained TSA personnel who observe travelers throughout the airport, looking for specific indicators that might suggest nervousness, deception, or hostile intent. This program, previously called Screening of Passengers by Observation Techniques, uses a checklist of dozens of behavioral cues to identify passengers who warrant closer examination. These officers engage travelers in casual conversation, watch body language, and look for signs of stress that seem disproportionate to the situation. Excessive sweating, avoiding eye contact, arriving unusually late for a flight, frequently changing lines, or giving inconsistent answers to simple questions can all draw attention. Officers may direct selected passengers to additional screening without ever explaining why they were chosen. This brings us to something practical that genuinely helps you move through security faster, understanding what X-ray machines actually see. When your carry-on goes through the scanner, TSA officers view a color-coded image where different materials appear in different shades. Organic materials like food, paper, and clothing appear orange. Metals show up as green or blue. The denser an object, the darker it appears on the screen. Officers are specifically trained to identify shapes associated with weapons and explosive components. A knife blade has a distinctive silhouette. Firearms are immediately recognizable. What triggers the most bag searches, however, are cluttered images where the contents are packed so tightly that individual items cannot be distinguished. Electronics stacked on top of each other, tangled cables, and dense clusters of toiletries all create visual noise that forces officers to conduct manual inspections. The solution is straightforward. Pack your carry-on in layers with electronics and cables organized separately. If officers can clearly identify every item in your bag through the scanner, your odds of being pulled aside for additional screening drop significantly. This alone can save you 10 to 20 minutes at busy airports. Here is another secret that seasoned travelers know but rarely share. The TSA uses unpredictability as a deliberate security strategy. This means that even consistent rule followers can occasionally be subjected to random additional screening. Your shoes might need to come off one trip and stay on the next. Your laptop might need to come out of your bag at one airport but not another. Some checkpoints have new CT scanners that allow liquids and electronics to remain in bags, while others still require everything separated. As of 2025, the long-standing requirement to remove shoes at TSA checkpoints has been eliminated for most passengers. This change came after nearly 2 decades of mandatory shoe removal, which began in response to a failed bombing attempt in 2001. However, TSA officers retain the discretion to request shoe removal if something triggers an alarm or if the passenger is selected for additional screening through other means. The liquid rule, known officially as the 311 regulation, remains in effect at all US airports. Each passenger can carry liquids, gels, and aerosols in containers no larger than 3.4 ounces, and all containers must fit within a single quart-sized clear plastic bag. Some European airports have begun allowing larger liquid containers after installing advanced CT scanners that can analyze contents in detail, but this technology has not been universally adopted in the United States. Most travelers don't realize that certain items classified as liquids might surprise them. Toothpaste, mascara, hummus, peanut butter, and even some types of snow globes all fall under liquid restrictions. Anything with a gel-like or spreadable consistency will be measured against the 3.4-ounce limit, regardless of whether you consider it a liquid. Homemade food with sauces or dips will receive additional scrutiny, and unlabeled containers are more likely to be confiscated. Now, let us talk about something that catches thousands of travelers off guard every year: lithium batteries. The rules surrounding these power sources are stricter than most passengers realize, and the penalties for violating them can include confiscation of expensive equipment and civil fines. Spare lithium batteries, including portable chargers and power banks, are completely prohibited in checked luggage. They must be carried in your carry-on bag, where flight crew can respond quickly if a battery begins to overheat. This rule exists because lithium batteries can undergo thermal runaway, a chain reaction where overheating leads to fire or explosion. In the cargo hold of an aircraft, a battery fire could become catastrophic before anyone knew it was happening. Batteries installed in devices like laptops and cameras can travel in checked bags, but those devices should be completely powered off. Smart luggage with built-in batteries presents a particular challenge. If the battery cannot be removed from the suitcase, most airlines will refuse to accept the bag as checked luggage. Some airlines now require that even removable batteries be shown at check-in to verify they meet capacity limits. Speaking of capacity limits, lithium-ion batteries are measured in watt-hours. Batteries under 100 watt-hours, which includes most smartphones, laptops, and standard power banks, can be carried without restriction. Batteries between 100 and 160 watt-hours require airline approval and are limited to 2 per passenger. Anything over 160 watt-hours is prohibited on passenger aircraft entirely. Between January and May of 2025 alone, there were more than 20 incidents involving lithium battery fires on commercial aircraft. Most were contained quickly because the batteries were in the cabin where flight attendants could respond. Several airlines, including Southwest and multiple Asian carriers, now require that power banks remain visible and accessible during flights, rather than stored in overhead bins. Let us shift to something that directly affects your wallet: the consequences of bringing prohibited items to checkpoints. In 2024, TSA officers intercepted nearly 6,700 firearms at airport security checkpoints across the country. That works out to roughly 18 guns discovered every day. Approximately 94% of those firearms were loaded. The financial consequences for bringing a firearm to a checkpoint are severe. TSA can impose civil penalties up to $15,000 per incident. Beyond the fine, travelers lose their TSA PreCheck eligibility for at least 5 years on a first offense and permanently on a second. Local law enforcement may also file criminal charges depending on state law, which can result in arrest at the checkpoint. Travelers are permitted to transport firearms in checked luggage if they follow specific procedures. The firearm must be unloaded, placed in a locked hard-sided container, and declared to the airline at the ticket counter. Ammunition can be packed in the same container as the firearm or separately, but it must be in its original packaging or a container designed for ammunition storage. Replica weapons create a different kind of problem. Even obviously fake firearms, toy grenades, and novelty items that resemble explosives will be confiscated and can cause significant delays. In 2025, TSA officers discovered everything from replica pipe bombs to inert rocket-propelled grenades in passenger luggage. Every such item triggers additional screening protocols that can affect not just the passenger who packed it, but dozens of others waiting in line. Here is something that makes international travelers particularly vulnerable to mistakes. Security rules vary significantly between countries, and what passes through screening in one nation may be confiscated in another. Most of the world does not require routine shoe removal at security checkpoints. The United States was nearly unique in this requirement until 2025, with only Russia, the Philippines, and a handful of other countries following similar protocols. International travelers returning to the United States often forget that they have been operating under different rules and are caught off guard when American security procedures differ from what they experienced abroad. European airports that have installed advanced CT scanners allow passengers to leave liquids and electronics in their bags during screening. However, passengers flying from those airports to the United States may still need to follow American regulations when boarding their return flight, as many international departures to US destinations applied TSA standards at the gate. The European Union implemented a digital border system in 2025 that replaced traditional passport stamps with electronic records. Travelers who expected a stamp as proof of their visit received nothing physical, though their entry and exit were recorded in a centralized database. This change surprised many passengers who were unaware the system had launched. Now, here is a secret that can legitimately save you time at almost any airport. TSA PreCheck remains one of the most underutilized travel benefits available. Members typically wait less than 10 minutes at security, with 99% of PreCheck passengers clearing checkpoints in under that threshold. Compare that to standard lanes where waits can exceed 30 minutes during peak travel periods. PreCheck members keep their shoes on, leave laptops and liquids in their bags, and use dedicated security lanes that tend to move faster because everyone in line is familiar with the process. The program costs between $78 and $85 depending on the enrollment provider, and membership lasts 5 years. Children 12 and under can accompany PreCheck members through the expedited lanes without their own membership. Children between 13 and 17 can also use PreCheck lanes when traveling with a parent, as long as the PreCheck indicator appears on the child's boarding pass as well. This makes the program particularly valuable for families who would otherwise spend considerable time managing strollers, car seats, and children's items through standard screening. Multiple credit cards reimburse the PreCheck application fee, making the program effectively free for cardholders. Global entry, which includes PreCheck benefits plus expedited customs processing when returning from international trips, is similarly reimbursed by many travel cards and costs only slightly more than PreCheck alone. For those who want even faster processing, TSA's Touchless ID program is expanding to 65 airports in spring 2026. This system uses facial recognition to verify passenger identity, eliminating the need to present physical documents at the checkpoint podium. Passengers must opt in through their airline and carry physical ID as backup. Let us address one final area that catches travelers off guard: the screening of medications and medical devices. Prescription medications in pill form can pass through security in any reasonable quantity for personal use. However, certain medications containing controlled substances may receive additional attention, particularly if they are not in their original pharmacy containers. Liquid medications, including insulin, cough syrup, and prescription eye drops, are exempt from the 3.4-ounce limit when medically necessary. These items should be declared to TSA officers at the beginning of the screening process. Separating medications from other liquids can expedite inspection. Medical devices such as insulin pumps, pacemakers, and cochlear implants may trigger screening equipment, but are generally compatible with both walk-through metal detectors and advanced imaging technology. Passengers with medical devices should inform TSA officers before screening begins and can request additional assistance through TSA Cares at 855-7878-2227. Everything you have heard today represents information that TSA and airlines expect passengers to know, but rarely explain clearly. Understanding these systems transforms airport security from an unpredictable obstacle into a process you can navigate efficiently. If you found this information useful, subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. We create content that helps travelers avoid common mistakes and move through airports with confidence. Drop a comment below sharing which rule surprised you most, or tell us about an experience you had with airport security that other travelers should know about. Your stories help fellow passengers prepare for what they might encounter.